Hey everybody, welcome back to White Mountain Approved. My name is Ken and we're coming with Keith and Ian and Dave, our regular crew. We're so glad you're taking the time to turn into these broadcasts. And we want you to encourage other people to jump on. We're just doing everything regarding gear reviews and hiking in the New Hampshire Whites. And so there's a huge hiking community out there that we want to be a service to. And as a matter of fact, today we're going to be talking about how we prepare mentally, physically, psychologically for a winter hike. And then if we have a little bit of time, we're going to talk about some of the sketchiest stuff we've either seen or experienced while on a trail. And then we're going to talk about some of the funniest things we've ever seen. If we don't have time, we'll just kick some of those off to our next broadcast. So make sure you're always staying tuned. And so let's jump right in with how we prepare for a winter hike. And Keith, why don't you jump on that?
Hi, everyone. Yeah. Okay. So first thing I do, I think is the most important, is I look at the weather report. I want to know what kind of conditions I'm going to be hiking in and whether or not it's reasonable to hike in them. So from that, I will prepare my pack for layering, maybe heavier or lighter clothes. So as you get hiking, you all know you kind of layer down so you don't overheat. Headgear is important. Sometimes you get away with a ball cap. Other times you might need a full knit hat or even face protection. And also you want to know whether or not you're going to need your spikes or your snowshoes. It's all part of important to make sure you have a successful and fun hike. That's about it as far as what I'll do.
And you have to go through that like what, maybe twice a year to do 2 winter hikes?
Yeah, once for summer, once for winter.
I just dug these bad boys out, so I can't wait to give them a try. Sometimes the micro spikes just aren't enough, and I put these full crampons on, and I'm like, I'm gonna love these, especially those toe spikes. I can kick the person in front of me in the butt, get them going a little faster.
Those will be good for Pawtucket this year.
Yeah, especially seeing why we don't have any snow. So, okay, well, Keith, thanks a lot. That's all good, important stuff. The weather, we could spend a whole broadcast, and maybe we will someday, just spending a whole day, a whole show on talking about how important checking out the weather is and making sure you're looking at multiple sources, because you don't want to take just one person's view. And folks, you should see the behind the scenes when the 4 of us try to do a hike. It's pretty comical. That in itself could be one of the funniest things we could ever talk about. So one of the things I take in consideration is hydration, because you do dehydrate faster in the winter, and you're working a little bit harder going through the snow and a little bit tougher conditions. And so the first thing I do is I look at the weather and I see where it's going to be around the freezing point. If it's going to hover below freezing, that means I'm not going to be bringing a bladder, because those tubes tend to freeze up right on the junction where that valve is. And then it becomes a non-issue at that point. So if it's going to be below freezing, I'm going to switch over to Nalgene bottles. And even with that, I'm going to have them into some kind of neoprene cases or some kind of thermal protective barriers on the Nalgenes. I'll put 1 liter in my backpack, kind of close to my back, so it's going to get some body heat as well. And it'll be wrapped in a Nalgene. And then another one I'll put in a thermal protector, and I'll hang it right here. And then if it's going to be really cold, I'll even flip the bottle upside down. And I do that because water freezes at the top, and sometimes that neck can freeze solid. And even though there's still liquid in there, if you can't get to it, it doesn't do any good. So I'll flip it upside down, let the bottom freeze, and I can still drink from it. I've heard some people talk about putting like alcohol in their Nalgene bottles, like, some whiskey or vodka or something like that. I don't necessarily think that that's a great idea. They say it keeps the water from freezing, and it might, but it also opens your body pores. And so that's going to make you sweat more, which can contribute to, the possibility of freezing, getting, what's that term I'm looking for? Hypothermia. Thanks. That went right south. But the other thing too is, drinking alcohol, I don't think like clouding your brain on a hike is necessarily a good thing to do. So it will open your pores. It will make you sweat a little bit more, and that could lead to hypothermia. The other thing I will do is I might ditch a Nalgene bottle filled with a fluid and bring a thermos filled with a hot fluid, like either coffee, tea, hot chocolate, something like that, especially if it's going to be down into the teens, the lower teens. I'm going to definitely think about bringing something hot to drink. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add, just that topic about hydration. So Dave?
Yeah, I'll follow up with that. And those are all really great points. I have a checklist in my mind that I go through just to make sure that I have everything that I need. And a lot of that is equipment that I carry every hike that we go on. A lot of the 10 essentials I do have. But like you, I sort of judge what I will be wearing, at least to start out the hike based on the weather conditions. I tend to run a little warmer when we hike. And especially in the winter when I work up a sweat going up, I always make sure that I have a change of clothes as we get closer to the top, especially the shirt, just to, if I need to, take that layer off, get a dry layer on so that I can stay warm. But really, the weather forecast for me signals what I need to bring, if I need to bring extra equipment, what I need to keep on the top of my pack that I can get to quickly. Something that I found very helpful over the past couple of years hiking in the winter is to make sure that I have a pair of hand warmers open and inside my mittens. I have a couple of different pairs of mittens that I use because, as we learned, PK, on the top of Jackson, if you're taking them out expecting them to work right away, they don't. So you really need to have them working. You need to have them ready. You need to have them inside your mitten long before you need them. So that's something that I do all the time, and I always carry extras with me. I think they're just great to have. They certainly make something that would be very unenjoyable for your body in terms of your hands and your feet. They make it a little bit easier to cut through some of that really deep cold in the winter. It really makes a huge difference. But yeah, I consider all of the layers that I'm wearing beforehand. I lay it all out typically. I get it all set up, and then in the morning when we're ready to go, I throw the clothes on and I pack the rest and off we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That's great stuff. And I think, like you mentioned, the 10 essentials. And I think, Dave, for you, the 10 essentials are 1, hand warmers, 2, toe warmers, 3, body warmers.
Yeah, pretty much.
Keith, were you there that night that we all get together and went over the contents of our packs with one another?
No, but I heard half of his pack was all hand and toe
It
warmers.
was unbelievable. There were enough hand warmers to fill like a 20-liter pack.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good. We're going to just start calling him Hand Warmer Dave. So, but then, those hand warmers are actually, Dave, that really is important because they can be lifesavers. And I know my feet get cold and I always use toe warmers now. So it's a good call. Absolutely. Ian, how about you?
So me, the biggest thing I did, I'm in my 4th season of winter hiking, and I looked at my system as a whole. So what I do now is I have my pack set up. I've got a carabiner on my chest that I can put my buff on. I can put my balaclava on it, so I've got it right there. I've got my spikes on a carabiner because you're always taking them on, put them off, so that's all right there in your chest. And then I packed my bag so that the things that I'm going to put on the soonest, if I'm getting colder, are right on top. And then my layers are strategically placed down in my bag, so as it gets colder, I know that my layer is right there. And then I look at even down to my hip belt. I've got in my hip belt pocket, I put my hat on one side with hand warmers, so they're always right there. And then I've got my snacks on my other side. Because I run super hot, so I got to start nice and cold, and then I cool down quick if we stop to eat or whatnot. So I'll have to get my layers on quick and be able to take them off quick and have somewhere to put them, so I'm not holding up the hike.
Yeah, that's really important. I like what you said about thinking about what is the most needed thing that you're going to be using and having that at the most ready available position. Yeah. Yep. So whether it's in a side pouch or even a pants pocket or the top flap of your pack. Sometimes I used to keep my spikes in my pack. Now I keep them in that top section. I can just unzip it and get them right out. So yeah, that's all good stuff. Any other last thoughts by any one of you guys?
I just want to jump in for a moment here. And it was something that Ian and Keith and I were speaking about on the last hike, and that's hydration. And in the winter, you tend not, especially if you have your Nalgene bottle inside your pack in a neoprene or a wool sock or something just to keep it from freezing, you tend not to drink a lot in the winter. And I know I've finished some hikes, and I realize, I have most of the water that I brought with me, and that certainly can be a problem. And I know Keith and Ian were talking about that just on our last hike.
Yeah, you really got to force yourself to drink in the winter. It's hard. Yeah. When we did Tecumseh, I think I only drank about a half a liter.
Yeah, I find myself not feeling thirsty during the hike, just like you, Ian. You don't end up drinking all the water you should. So you're right. You have to force yourself to drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, this last hike I did solo up Liberty, I think I ended up drinking about 2 liters of, like a liter and a half of like a water, a fluid, Propel or something like that, and then the thermos, which was probably 20 ounces or something. But yeah, it's very very important to stay hydrated. And a lot of people in summer hiking, they'll have one of these uh, filtering systems like a life straw or something like that. But that doesn't do you any good in the winter if everything's frozen solid, unless you can find open flowing water. But the best thing is to carry your hydration with you. And don't assume you're going to find any on the trail in winter hiking. So good. Anything else from you guys on winter hiking? There's a boatload of stuff that we'll be revisiting in the future on just different things you can think about, survival gear, fire starting gear, and we'll cover some of that stuff. We'll probably even do some gear reviews on some of this gear as we keep moving forward. So don't miss any of these broadcasts. So let's move into the next category, and that is what's like one of the sketchiest things you either experienced or that you saw while hiking. And who's going to go first on that?
I'll go first.
Keith, all right.
I'll jump in. About 3 years ago, Dave, Pastor Ken, and myself were doing the Belknap Range Trail. And it starts over at Gunstock Mount Row and ends at Mount Major in Alton. Well, we've gone all the way across. We got to Mount Major now. It was, I want to say, early to mid-April. There was snow on the ground, and it was cold enough to still have ice on the rocks. I don't know if any of you out there have ever hiked Mount Major, but the trail, the shortest route is going up over the side of the granite slab rock. And so we were coming down that, and it was slippery. We had our hiking spikes on, and I looked, and there were several families here with young kids trying to navigate that up and down in just sneakers. To me, I thought that was kind of risky, especially with young kids like that. So.
Yeah, that is footwear again in the winter. You can't overstate the importance of having traction. You're going to run into ice, and some people start on a trail and it's brown ground and maybe a little muddy, and they think, oh, this is fine, but you don't realize the higher elevation you go, the colder it's going to get, and you're going to run into ice. And so just make sure you have something with you. That's good. That's a good call. Who's next, Dave?
Yeah, Keith just reminded me of a situation, quite a few years ago. We were hiking the Twins, and it was in November. It was one of those cold mornings. We got started. There was no snow on the ground, and the gentleman I was hiking with, there's a water crossing at the very beginning of the trail, and he went out onto a rock, and the rock looked wet, but it was actually a sheet of ice. He hit it, went right over, and ended up right in the drink. He got soaking wet. His gear got wet. So that can really be miserable if you're not careful on the ice. That was a really good point, Keith. I'll just throw out, it was a hike that I was on with Ian a few years back with another gentleman by the name of Brian. We decided to do Mount Musalaki, and it was on a day that the wind was forecasted to be pretty strong. It was also a little bit cloudy, but it was supposed to have cleared in the afternoon. So we got up onto the ridge line of Mount Musalaki, headed over to the summit, and it was brutal. Probably the windiest conditions I've been in yet. We had to don our goggles. We ultimately back just because it was so strong. And the visibility was just really poor. That's the sketchiest for me, that in terms of weather that I've been on.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Good call too. Folks, if you're listening, if you're new to hiking, please have those red flags and know when to turn back. It's not worth it. You want to live another day. The mountains will be there. Don't push the envelope. Don't get yourself in trouble. Put yourself in a precarious situation. Just turn around and enjoy the rest of the day. Yeah. Anything else, you guys? Ian, how about you?
Yeah, probably one of the sketchiest ones that made me uncomfortable was my wife Caroline and I, we hiked Lincoln and Lafayette last year for flags on 48. We took the Skookumchuck Trail to kind of cut down on the people we'd see and kind of this craziness. So when we were coming back, we got right to the junction of the Skookumchuck Trail, and we sat down and had a snack. And these girls come over from Lafayette down onto the junction, and they're looking at their map. So they looked really confused. So I went over and I asked them, I was like, hey, you guys know where you're going? What do you got? And they said, oh, we're trying to go down the Greenleaf Trail. And I was like, well, you're a little bit far off from where you're supposed to be, right? They're like, no, it's right here. I was like, no, this isn't the right trail. So I was like, let me see your map. So they had printed out a screenshot of the map, and they weren't even on their map anymore. So I pulled out my map. I showed them where they are. They're like, we have to go back over that. I was like, yep. So they ended up having to go back over those few humps to Lafayette and descend down back to the parking lot. But they were on their way over to Garfield, and they had no idea about it. So I'm glad we were there to be able to get them pointed back in the right direction, because that could end a lot worse.
You know, again, folks, know your routes. You can get these White Mountain field maps. This set is made out of like a wax coating material. You can use it in the dead of winter, in the rain. This comes in a series of 4 maps that cover every trail up in the North Country. And it's real, especially in winter hiking. I mean, in any hiking, you really should have a backup of knowing the trails, because some of these areas, there's multiple spider webs of trails that go off of trails, and you can get really turned around. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, the other thing about the trails is, surprisingly, a lot of them aren't clearly marked. They have very few blazes on them. So you really got to know what trail you're on, where you're going.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like all the dead trails along the dead trees along the trails are the ones that have the blazes. You're always the first to get hit by lightning and get blown over by storms. So that's fun. I think for me, the sketchiest thing I ever saw, I'll never forget it, it's like emblazed in my brain, is my wife and I, with our 2 small kids, were going up the bridle path to Lafayette. And my wife and I stopped at the Greenleaf Hut, and the kids went on to the summit and then came back down. And we were coming back down, and we were very close to the trailhead. I mean, maybe a 1/10 of a mile, if that. But I saw a gentleman and his girlfriend / wife, I don't know, but she was literally in a dress wearing high heels, picking her way over the roots and the rocks, because, if you've hiked anything in the Whites, you know that they are not smooth gravel paths. They are loaded with roots and rocks, and you can't take your eyes off the trail, because if you do, you're going to do a face plant. And I never forgot that. I'm like, this woman is literally wearing dress shoes, high heels. And I thought, well, it might be good if she hit some mud, because they wear pumps, but can't help myself. All right. So having said that, any last comments before we move on to the next category? All right. So the next thing we wanted to cover is like, well, what's one of the funniest things you either saw or experienced or had happen? Who wants to go first on that?
I can. One of the funniest things that I saw it a while ago, and I know that I hope to dear Lord that they were testing out some gear. But the wife and I did Willard back a couple of years ago, and we're going down, and coming up the trail is this kid in full like Sportiva mountaineering boots with full on crampons. He had his ice axe, like he was ready for any situation that he could possibly encounter on Little Willard. So looking back, I hope I was judging him a little hard, and he was just testing out some new gear. But if not, I hope he does well on Everest.
Yeah. Yeah, if you wear these summer hiking, give us a call. We'll talk to you. It might be good for repelling a bear if you can kick really well. But yeah, now, Ian, that's funny. Do you consider like taking your hiking pole and knocking snow down the back of the guy in front of you? Like, is that really funny?
It's worth a laugh.
Yeah, no comment, right? Sure. All right. Actually cooled me off, so I'm not going to complain too bad, because I was sweating. I was going up Mount Cannon, and that's a task. All right. Who's next?
I got one. Back in September, BK and I did Mount Washington. And on our way up, we were near the summit of Mount Washington. It was about a mid-50s day. We were in shorts, T-shirts. This fellow was coming down, and I thought he was just coming out of the Arctic. He had a full-on wool knit hat on. He had heavy outer layer on, and the oddest thing with that is he had a bell on. You could hear him coming for a quarter mile. That was kind of a odd but funny thing too. I hope he had a lot of water, because he was definitely overheating.
That is funny. I'm just going to take a moment, because I'm actually starting to work on my 3rd book a little bit, and I have this category of hikers that you will encounter. And Keith, I can't believe you brought that up, because number 6 is the what the heck is that? And this is the 60-year-old nerdy guy who carries enough 30-year-old gear to permanently live above tree line. Don't get me going. He wears a bear bell the size of a He wears a bear bell the size of a tennis ball that gongs like a Tibetan monastery while listening to Technology Today through his ear pods. He has a hat made out of real yak's fur, and it's hard to tell where the yak ends and he begins. You cannot miss this guy. He wears a down jacket so big he looks like a marshmallow, but it's offset by his skinny shorts and his white socks and sandals. His homemade hiking pole looks as it doubles as a murder weapon, which causes people to give him a wide berth while trampling over the fragile mountain flora and fauna. So that's just a taste of the book that's going to be coming out, Lord knows when. But I was actually writing some of this stuff, and then I looked at it again, and I'm like, I'm kind of being mean-spirited, but it is funny, right?
It is funny. It's true. Definitely.
All right, if we can't laugh at ourselves, what's good? So my funniest thing is, I did this overnighter with this guy, and I'm not gonna give names, but his initials are Dave Salois, and so we're camping out, and like I'm tired, and I think I mentioned when we were talking about the sleeping pads and the air pillows, I need to get a good night's sleep because I got to keep this going, and so I went to sleep. I nodded right off, and this guy's getting calls at 11:30 at night. Wake me up out of a dead sound sleep, and he's over there talking to somebody 11:30 at night on his cell phone. I couldn't believe it. It was just crazy. It made me laugh all night long.
So the truth to that is, I was sound asleep and you called. Hello? Stop snoring.
Oh man. The funniest thing about that is like our sleeping bags were literally like 4 feet apart from one another. And I had just gotten up to go shake the dew off the lily, and I come back into my sleeping bag and I'm like, what's this? And I'm like, oh, it's my phone. I'm like, oh. Oh man, it's fun. Yeah. So you got to have fun while you're out there doing the stuff you do, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Hey, any closing thoughts from any one of you guys?
No.
Well, I'll throw this out. I know we were, prior to the episode, we were talking about a potential hike this coming Saturday. Just as Ian mentioned, coming off a week of rain in mist and dew and clouds, hoping to get out this coming Saturday and maybe do one of the nice peaks. It'd be nice, especially if they're predicting some potential snow, I believe, for Friday. So that would be nice as well.
Cool. If it's not deep snow, we can just do micro spikes.
Yeah.
I hate snowshoes. Anyways, Ian, we had, I guess you ran like a little contestant in our last broadcast, a little competition or something. I wasn't aware of it, but then you were just telling me about it. Why don't you share what happened with that? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so essentially we did our first video, and PK was talking about how he had to cut his tough spaghetti with his little spork over there. So I just asked someone to DM me what he was cutting with his spork, and we sent him a shirt, and he actually replied today. He watched it. He saw the story, so he sent me back, and we're gonna be sending him out a book instead of a shirt. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled if you like that kind of stuff, and also if you like what you're seeing, give us a like down below, and also hit the subscribe button so you can get when we're coming out. And we're definitely gonna be doing more giveaways and more little contests like that for sure.
Very cool. Yeah, we got some hats, we got some stickers. We got some stuff we can give away, maybe one or a couple of copies of my books and things like that. So yeah, definitely stay in tune, get some other people. Maybe we'll do like a drive, like the person in 1 week who can get the most subscribers to like us. We can do a giveaway with something like that.
Yep.
But, all right. Again, any last thoughts before we sign off?
That's it.
You guys good? All right. Well, listen, folks, stay safe on the trails. Remember, White Mountain approves, and we'll see you on our next broadcast.
Happy New Year.
Take care.
Safe hiking, everybody.